younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
So The Substance is a film that I would almost categorize as more of an experience than a movie, because this is one of those rare occurrences. It's a film I could almost compare to no other. I don't know if I've ever seen a movie like this. It is so strange. And truly the biggest compliment I can give to any movie is to say that it makes you feel something. I came from a double feature of seeing Never Let Go going into this. Thought the first movie was very boring. I felt nothing. This movie, on the other hand, I felt every emotion, and I think a lot of people will. Laughter, sadness, anger, frustration, disgust. You'll be wincing, but you also can't look away. This movie is absolutely captivating. The way it's filmed, the way it sounds. This movie is incredibly unique. So for that reason alone, it deserves praise. That being said, though, this movie will not be for everyone. This movie is not for the faint of heart. If you are squeamish, you do not like very gory, very over-the-top body horror, this may be one to avoid because there is a lot of stuff that's hard to look at. When describing this film, I'm going to try to be as vague as possible in where it ends up going, because where it starts and where it finishes are miles away. So I'm going to try to describe this pretty vaguely and just kind of let you go from there, because this is one of those films, as I always warn, it's best to experience blind. It is a what the fuck journey where you're not going to know what's going on until it gets to the end, because it is all over the place. But what it's about to its core is it follows these two main characters played by Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. And Demi Moore is playing this older lady, not even old really, I think she's like 50 or so. She's playing this aging fitness instructor named Elizabeth Sparkles. And it's the oldest tale in the book. You have this aging celebrity who will do anything to look young, stay in the stardom. And this is one of those films that's a very direct metaphor. Normally metaphors can be over the top, they can be subliminal. This is one of those films that is completely embracing of its metaphor. So you know what you're going to get when you go into it. It's one of these films commentating on age, youth, what you'll do to stay a star. She's playing that aging character, and she's the main character of this, but there's a secondary character introduced named Sue. How Sue's introduced to this story is through Demi Moore's character when she gets this product called The Substance. And she's supposed to follow the instructions to a T every week on the dot, no matter what, no ifs, ands, or buts. And what it is it's just a contrast metaphor of older aging people, youth, a second chance at things, stardom, what it's like to be able to live through somebody else. There's so many different ways you can interpret this. I'm not going to get into them all and how they're exactly played out, but that's what it is. It's a giant metaphor for things. And honestly, it's very creative and incredibly well done. Now, starting off with what I like the most about this film, as I said in the opening, is captivating. This is a film you cannot look away during. It's almost 2.5 hours long. You do not feel it at all. The cinematography, the way this is filmed, probably my favorite of the year, some of my favorite. It looks absolutely beautiful, incredibly colorful, incredibly vibrant, such an artistic touch to this. Sound design as well. The way this is put together, you can tell whoever was the stylist behind this film just knew exactly what they wanted to capture, because this is a film that could come off very slow, very boring, and just very over the top in how it's done. That's not how this feels at all. This feels incredibly fresh, incredibly unique, and it makes the runtime of a movie that, quite frankly, is very hard to watch at certain points feel very fun and very vibrant, and I think that's masterful that they can pull that off. The second thing that clearly stands out to this is the casting. I think everybody who had a role in this film does great. Demi Moore, amazing in this film, and she's playing this aging fitness instructor. I said I believe she's 50 or so, and it's, again, the commentary and the metaphor of the fact she's aging, what she'll do for youth, stardom, all of that stuff. She's 50, but she's still beautiful. So it's kind of highlighting how people who still have it all can kind of go down that rabbit hole. You know what we always see in Hollywood, the plastic surgery epidemic, all of this stuff to remain to your 5 minutes of fame. She's in that scenario in this film. She looks gorgeous. She acts great in her role, but she still just doesn't feel like she has enough. She cannot stand the fact that her career is passing her by, so she wants a second chance at life, and she takes this substance. She really sells you on this role. I think she's probably going to be up for an Oscar. Absolutely kills it. Second to her is Sue, played by Margaret Qualley. She's equally as good. Absolutely great in her role playing this up-and-coming youthful dancer. She's probably perfectly cast for this. I've seen her in a couple of things. She's a very hit-or-miss actress in my opinion. Not talent-wise, but what she's in. She's a part of some of my favorite films of the past 5 years, but also a part of one of my least favorite films of all time. So I think she's incredibly talented. Glad she took this project. After watching this role, I could not think of a single actress I think could have pulled off this role as well as her. The last honorable mention when it comes to acting in this is Dennis Quaid, playing this very weird and slimy, quirky executive. Absolutely perfectly cast. If you've seen this, you'll probably agree. He is everywhere in this. He's such a slime ball. He's kind of funny at points. absolutely disturbing in his mannerisms. I just thought he was perfectly cast, so I have to give him a shout out. Again, just like the other two that were cast, I cannot think of anybody who would have killed the role as much as he did after seeing it in hindsight, so thumbs up to everybody involved. Because I already mentioned that this is clearly metaphorical and it can be interpreted in many ways, I need to point out the fact that I enjoyed the way this was done, because there's a trend on my channel where I call out films for their intentions and being metaphorically heavy and things like that. There's a way to do it right, and I think this movie does it, because I understand the intention of metaphors. The way this film chooses to go about it, you understand from the get-go exactly what this film's trying to do, and it nails it. And it's done in a way that's not preachy, it's not pretentious, it's right there for you to see and enjoy and interpret however you want. And it's also done in a way where there's actually a movie aside from the metaphor. Where a lot of movies these days, they're all metaphor, there's no substance. Ironically, this movie's called The Substance. It has substance behind it aside from the metaphor. You could watch this movie without even caring about the metaphor and you could have a good time. But aside from that, it has that deeper layer that you could probably come back and watch this movie a couple of times and keep getting more and more out of. That's something I really like and appreciate, and I need to call it out when it's done well. This movie's one of the better examples as of recent, trying to go for a more elevated take on horror, but it's done very smoothly. I also wanted to point out that this is a very female-heavy movie, from the director down to the two leads, and I thought it was really cool because it worked. We don't get too many of those in horror, especially elevated horror, but it was nice to get that woman's perspective and interpretation on their elevated horror, what they experience, because we don't get it too often. And as I said, everybody will leave this theater feeling something, whether you love it or hate it, because this is a movie that goes for it. I was disgusted, I was unsettled, I was wincing at points, but it's also not lost on me that the commentary and the visuals and everything they're interpreting, I'm sure, hits a lot harder if you're a woman. Because the subject matter they're tackling, it does apply to men, but nowhere near as much as women because of that unfair societal standard when it comes to women's aging compared to men. This is commentary on that and the way they show it. As I said, I'm sure it will never hit the same way for me as it will for girls who go and see this film. I thought it was really cool we got that in horror because we don't usually get any of those, and since it was done well, wanted to point it out. I also thought it was such a good creative idea to have so much nudity and sex in this film, which sounds weird to say, because you see so many naked bodies, so much vulnerableness in the way they depict aging bodies compared to youthful bodies, just things that completely sell you on the point and make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, both in how they depict it and the message behind it and what it feels like to age, and I'm sure how that relates. Again, I'm kind of on the younger side, but I'm sure if you're an older person watching this, how they depict that, and it makes you feel maybe how you missed your youth and how you can't go back to that. There's just so much you could go on and say about this. I thought it was a really smart choice to make it so sex-centric. I know it might rub some people the wrong way, might be too heavy. For me, I thought it was a really smart stylistic choice, as weird as that sounds to say. Lastly, and probably what word of mouth is going to pick up on the most related to The Substance, is the body horror element. I think this is a horror movie for sure, but not in the traditional sense. It's more of a satire or comedy, just with body horror elements thrown in. But yeah, if you're somebody who's squeamish, you don't like body horror in particular, like wounds, surgical type wounds, this movie might be one to avoid because there is a lot of very hard imagery to look at, very unsettling, a lot of gore, a lot of over-the-top violence. So this might be one to skip if that's you, but at the same time, I thought it was captivating and done really cool. So if you're a horror fan, there's definitely something here for you as well. Really, the only things I would say I didn't fully enjoy in this film were the final 10 minutes or so. It's about 2.5 hours long. I think they could have carved about 10 minutes out of it. So minor gripe, but I didn't really think the ending worked perfectly for me. I'm sure some people will like it more than I did. I thought they kind of missed the ball a little bit in what they were trying to do. That's the only minor gripe I have. But other than that, I think this one is a really good time. I think it offers a lot of stylistic choices when it comes to the way it's filmed. The sound design is great. Acting is top notch. A very memorable story the way it's depicted. Body horror, if you're somebody who's into that. If you're somebody who's squeamish, maybe avoid it. But overall, I had myself a really good time with The Substance, and I think I would buy it on Blu-ray. So have you guys seen or heard of The Substance? If you have, comment down below, let me know, or let me know what your favorite body horror movie is. As always, if you haven't subscribed, join me down below, but that's all I got in this video. Peace.